What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the Boot Report. This is episode number 8. Today is all about Lamine Yamal's performances in the recent Champions League, some insane new AirMax 95 drops, both Whitout and Blackout, and we're going to answer all of your questions with some other cool stuff in between. Now, let's get straight into the weekly news, which is section 1. We are going to talk a little bit about Lamine Yamal. So, at 17 years old, Messi had 9 games, 1 goal, and 0 assists at the top level. Cristiano Ronaldo had 19 games, 5 goals, and 4 assists. Very good. Lamine Yamal at 17 has 100 games, 22 goals, and 27 assists. That is ridiculous. Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to go over with Lamine Yamal, and I talked about it a little bit this week in the newsletter that went out, or that will go out, I guess, the day before this podcast. So if you want content like this, make sure you guys go and subscribe to the newsletter on my website, just noahcavanaugh.com/newsletter. And a couple of the things we talked about, and basically the title of that newsletter was The No Bullshit Way to Go Pro. Really the no BS. Here's actually what it takes to get to the professional level. Now, obviously, I'm nowhere I will never be, was never even close to where any of these players are, right? So there's obviously levels, but you can be a lower level Division Pro player, still make money playing, still make a living, and still, get money playing your dream, which is amazing. But a couple of the things we talked about in that newsletter, I think, are really pertinent here. So people are sort of touting Lamine Yamal. You saw Thierry Henry talk about him. You saw kind of that group at CBS talk about him. You see all over the internet, people are blowing up about this guy. And being 17, how is he so mature? How is he able to see the game in the way he does? His technique on the ball is exceptional. His passing's exceptional. And obviously he can score goals and dribble and cross and do all sorts of stuff, right? And he actually defends and works well. So, and this is kind of relevant to last week's episode of the Boot Report, where we talked a little bit about the center four, or the front three for Real Madrid, right? Who were three of them were in the top 5. All 3 of them were in the top 5 least active players on the field in the Champions League, which, again, this is an interesting juxtaposition here. A lot of talents have been compared to Messi, have been compared to Cristiano Ronaldo. Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, though, yes, they're still playing. I consider Messi and Cristiano to be the old generation, or the previous generation, right? So the previous generation, Iniesta, Xavi, Scholes, Giggsy, Ronaldo, Messi, like that era of players, right? Wesley Sneijder, some amazing players during that time. Yamal is sort of the new generation of players. And even during the time of Messi and Cristiano, you saw a lot of players being compared to them. Oh, is this the new Messi? Is this the new Ronaldo? Is this the new whatever? And I think comparison is where you really, number one, as a football enthusiast, you really sort of lose sight of just the pure enjoyment of watching these incredible players. So let's just, instead of comparing, like, it's great to put stats up on screen and say, hey, Lamine's already way ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi at the time, but let's see what the longevity looks like. So point number 1 in this comparison really is longevity, right? Can he stay injury-free? Can he stay in the game at the top level long enough? Can he perform at the top level long enough? And Barcelona and La Masia, the academy there, have in my opinion, a very, very solid foundation for building world-class players, right? You see some of the names that I just mentioned, Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, Piqué, Puyol, like all these incredible players. Now, Lamine, God, I keep mixing up the letters of his name, Lamine. And you see these players coming out, Gavi, and I know Pedri played for another team, but he's, exceptional. You see guys like old Xavi Simons, those guys who came up in the Barca academy. And so the question is really, does he have longevity? Can he stay in the game long enough? And along with that, the next point is his goals and assists production. Given the comparisons that he's already getting with Ronaldo and Messi, is he going to be able to tally the amount of goals that these guys are and the amount of assists that these guys are? Based on his current trajectory and the way that he sort of plays, I would guess that he's going to be definitely, let's assume that he's going to be at this insane level for the next at least 13 years till he's 30 years old. Let's like assume that he's going to go injury free and all that stuff. He's going to be, I would imagine if his assists and goals ramp up with his age, as they should, I would guess he'll be in the similar category from an assist perspective. I don't know if he'll be in the same goal category. Obviously, he would have to start producing some absolutely ridiculous goal contributions. Maybe he starts to float into the center a little bit more, get more on-goal shots, all that stuff. Right now, we're seeing sort of a new age of winger, which is really cool. We're sort of seeing the return of like some amazing wingers. You have, Lamine, Rafinha on Barcelona, Vinny Jr. on Madrid. I would argue Mbappe is more of a winger, so like Mbappe's in that conversation. You see some PSG with Doué and with, who am I thinking of? Dembele. And you have all these wingers that are just producing, which is really cool. So can he do goal and assist production? Which is going to be obviously, if he's going to be even in the conversation close to that type of play, that caliber of player. Because obviously at 17, we looked at CR7 and we looked at Messi and went, yeah, wonder kids, sure. But like, so are half the boys that, get first team minutes at that level, right? Next, we go to work ethic, discipline, and focus. Because I would imagine that some players more than others, but if Lamine isn't able to have insane work ethic like he does, discipline like it seems like he does, and focus, he's going to fall off in, 5 years, 6 years, just like pretty much every other player did. Or maybe not hit the potential that he seems to already be displaying, which is pretty cool. And then there's, young talent and sort of the hype around the player. But you look at you watch interviews with him, and it's like whoever's coaching him, whether it's a parent or the players who are around him, or most likely they have some sort of like elite level mindset coach. He's got an elite mindset already, and he's not even a man yet. He's not even like a legal age yet, which is pretty crazy. The last question that I would pose to you, that I'm interested to know your comments down below. Do you think that he's going to be able to reinvent himself as the Barcelona team changes and new personnel and coaching staff come in? I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but you look at a guy like Lewandowski, who's in his 30s, Rafinha's in his 30s. Some of these other players are in their 30s, right? So the other attacking players he's around are going to change. Just like you look at Messi's career and you saw Messi on that right wing, he played with Eto'o and Pedro and Ibrahimovic, and you name all the forwards that he's played with, right? And Messi had to adapt a little bit. Sure, the team was kind of built around him. Is that going to happen to Lamine? Who knows? I'm so impressed with him. I'm so impressed with the way that he moves off and on the ball. Obviously, he's a sensational talent, and I just cannot wait to continue with that. So next, let's move on to latest colorway drops. Thankfully, I know this is a boot podcast, or like more of a footy podcast, but kind of a boot-focused podcast. Latest colorway drops. There were only kind of 2 major boot drops, and one of them was regional, i.e. it was only available at one store. That's the first time I'm sort of like sighing relief, not because of it's going to make any really difference to the podcast, but I'm just excited because it means that there's a little bit of a cooling off period right now, I think, between quarter 1 and some of the other big tournaments and finals that are happening in a couple months. The first one, we got 3 new T90 colorways. Again, futsal shoes, and silver with the red accents, gold with green accents, kind of that Brazil looking colorway, and then white with gold accents. So all very cool. Those are ProDirect. I don't know if they're ProDirect exclusive, but they should be available pretty much everywhere on ProDirect, now that ProDirect is international as well. And then the regional variant was 11 Team Sports, which is a huge soccer store, huge football store, and Puma collabed for the Ultra Light Speed pack, which was the Ultra 5 and Ultra 5 Carbon. It's like a white base. It's got pinks and greens and sort of pastel-y pink, green, purple colors in it. And it looks kind of clean. Again, I think unless a colorway is absolutely shocking and sensational, like the red and gold and black F1 Japan F1 type boots, for me, I like the Ultra 5. I like the Ultra 5 Carbon. I like the silo of them. Right? These are it's a good looking silo. It's a very fast looking silo, but in my opinion, it's not. I don't know. You have to do the colorway really, really well for me to be like, oh my God. So T90 colorways, I'm a little like, yeah, whatever. The new Ultra Light Speed pack from 11 Team Sports is cool. Like, it's cool. I like the non-carbon edition because I think the black sole plate kind of ruins the all white look. Whereas the normal non-carbon version has a white or like a iridescent chrome. Yeah, it's like an iridescent chrome that matches the little accent cut, like the pastel-y accent colorways, which is pretty cool as well. All right, let's get into boot leak releases. Now, there are 2 kind of major boot leak releases that we got this week. Both are the same boot. I don't know if my guess is they aren't releasing at the exact same time, but there is a blackout or sort of pseudo blackout and definitely a whiteout of the Vapor 16 AirMax 95 collab. So last week we talked about so obviously Mbappe and Cole Palmer were wearing the AirMax 95, the white gray, like dark gray, light gray, white with the tiny bit of Volt accents. And they were wearing those ones several weeks ago. They've since now moved on, although Cole Palmer might still be wearing those, if I'm not mistaken, but Mbappe has moved on to his new purple special editions. There's the red and gray and black ones, which we will probably get, it sounds like, after, which was a leak from last week, but we actually have legit photos now of the whiteout and the blackout. The whiteout looks really nice. Again, similar to my comments last week about how this boot is constructed, there's extra materials. Let's see. I'll just use this. We'll talk about this boot in a minute. But there's extra materials, obviously, that are layered to make that kind of AirMax color combo that you could see on the actual sneaker, right? So the shoe itself. So that's going to affect the play. It's going to affect the grip. It's going to probably not be as grippy, if you will, especially in the areas where you're hitting and contacting the ball as much. The black edition looks like a combination. It's like a reworked and revamped Cosmic Speed, the original Cosmic Speed, which was that iridescent green, blue, yellow, chrome finish with the PVD. What was it called? PVD coating, I think it was called, which I sort of said in my video basically ruined the grip. So because of that specific color coding or color treatment, you actually ruin the grip knit that's on, not ruin, but you basically take away the grip that is the grip knit. So it's sort of like, why not just create a fly knit base with the color coding? Because then you make it a little bit thinner and, I don't know, maybe do something more special with this. So this one has the grip knit underneath, and then the PVD coated chrome material is the AirMax wave that is built onto the layers of the side. You'll see it in photos up on screen, but oh man, this is just Nike's throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's literally what this is to me. The white ones look okay. The white ones look better, in my opinion. I'm sure we'll see a lot of players in the white ones. I think it's going to look great with pretty much every kit. A whiteout boot always seems to look pretty fantastic, especially for players like myself and other pros who wear white grip socks no matter what the kit color is. That's the vibe, in my opinion. So Boot Leak releases just 2 of those today and 2 of those this week. There's been a couple other like leaks. I think there's going to be a special edition Tiempo coming out probably soon, although I don't really have any information other than just word, like sort of word through the grapevine that that's coming. My guess is it won't have K-leather probably, which is freaking annoying, but we'll see. All right, player boot brand swaps. Now, this is an interesting one because it's a player who I've already mentioned today, Desiré Doué for PSG, who's also one of the more exciting young players coming up in the ranks. He was warming up a couple games ago, or maybe this last game against Arsenal in the Skechers Razor in that white and silver colorway. I'll see if I can find him. Yeah, these ones. So he was wearing these ones in the recent warm-up and then seemed to switch over to the white, yellow, and black Vapor 11s, which is really cool. So it's definitely a throwback to like Neymar vibes. Speaking of young players being compared to legends of the game, he has been compared to Neymar a lot. People have been saying like, oh, he's the new Neymar, especially with that little behind the foot touch he takes out of the air. And he's incredibly skillful. He's very natural on the ball. He's very gifted. But anyway, really interesting. I'm curious to see whether he ends up signing with Skechers or whether he stays sort of like an Elise that wears kind of whatever he wants. You know, like that kind of stuff is really cool to me. And I love players who have such a high desire to wear retro stuff that they end up wearing them in, you know, Champions League semifinals. Like that's sick. And you see Elise wearing, is it Elise or am I thinking of somebody else? I'll put pictures up on screen, but the Bayern player who wears Hypervenom 3 DFs, the high tops, which is just so cool in my opinion. So that's going to be interesting. Skechers seems to be in the news a lot with boot brand swaps, especially here on this podcast. That's partially because a lot of players right now are pretty secure in contracts, and you see kind of major deals like Felix to Mizuno and stuff only every once in a while. A lot of players are pretty locked in at the moment, especially at least some of the major players in the top level of footy. All right, let's get into section 2, which is boot talk. Now, thank you to all those who did a last minute vote, and we are going to do the weekly boot comparison between, as I said, the Morelia Neo IV Beta and the Morelia Neo IV Beta Limited Special Edition. Now, these are 2 incredible pairs of football boots. They both perform at the very, very top level. There is most of what we are talking about today is a comparison of, okay, if you are going to split hairs, like we are threading the freaking needle on these ones because both of these are absolutely fantastic pairs of football boots. Now, we're going to go over sole plate, upper heel, comfort, performance, design, lace area, and X factor. And you'll notice more than probably most weeks, because of the nature of these boots, there's a lot of ties. And you'll see why, for obvious reasons. They're basically the same boot. The only thing that's changed is the sole plate and the fit a little bit and the way it reacts and performs and everything. Okay, so we're going to start off with something pretty controversial, I think. What sole plate is better between the 2 boots? Now, obviously with the Neo 4 Beta regular edition, you have a really nice ergonomic sole plate, feels very balanced. You've got that sort of Y truss here through the midfoot, or Y shank almost. And then you've got pretty decent snapback on here, very nice stability through the midfoot, and a conical stud pattern, which of course is one of my favorite on the market. It's very neutral. It's going to be great for AG and FG. I think it's responsive. It works great. There's really no BS going on. And I don't think there are many people who would put this sole plate on whatever boot fits them the best and be like, oh, this is a bad sole plate. It's a fabulous sole plate. And it's been around for a really long time, making micro adjustments moving forward. Now, a newer sole plate is the Alpha sole plate. So this is the Alpha sole plate. We're going to have to take away the Carvo for this conversation because this really is an outsole conversation, not really a sole. Like, I know Carvo is kind of part of the experience, so I might mention it here and there, but for the majority of the time, I want to talk just about kind of the outsole and the experience of the outsole. This one, obviously, because of that Carvo, has more responsiveness through the forefoot. It's got a really good amount of rigidity through the midfoot. Like, you cannot bend that at all. And then, of course, it's got the triangular studs in a very similar pattern to the regular Morelia Neo. It's just going to give you a little bit more aggression, particularly on you're going to really feel it on AG surfaces, and you'll feel it a little bit on FG, although probably not as much as most people think. Almost identical stud patterns, difference in the shape of you when you sit into the sole plate. This one feels a lot more flat and a little bit wider, whereas this one feels like you kind of sink into it almost ergonomically, kind of like Vapor 11 that we mentioned earlier. In my opinion, this is going to piss a lot of people off. I think the sole plate of the Neo 4 Beta is better. I think this neutral sole plate is a better overall sole plate. The reason I say that is because I think it's safer. It's going to be better for most people. It's my personal favorite because of just the way that you can move with conical studs. And if you're only going to buy one pair of football boots and you play on AG and FG surfaces, I'm going to recommend this one all day long over this one, because for some people, for probably 30 to 40% of the people who are in the market for a boot that's this expensive, maybe even more, this boot, if they play on AG, is going to be too much, right? And you're going to be at much more of a risk of injury. So I'm giving the sole plate to the Beta. Now moving on to the upper. This is an easy section. This is a tie because they are the exact same. The materials are the same. The leather feels identical. You could argue that, okay, I've worn this one a couple times, so like maybe this one's softer, but like it's the same upper. It's the exact, like everything is the exact same. So that's a tie. The heel area as well, another really easy one. They are the exact same heel area. I do kind of wish that Mizuno, while putting the Alpha sole plate on here, would have actually put the Alpha heel area on this as well. I think that would have been super special. The Neo 4 Beta heel area is fine. It's not my favorite on the market, but it's probably in the top 10 maybe. Yeah, I'd probably give it top 10 status. I don't think it touches Asics heel areas. I don't think it touches. I actually think like Puma King Ultimate 2.0 has a better heel area than this. So yeah, that's kind of where it stands. It's good, but it's not great. But they're the exact same. So this is the heel area is also a tie. Now, from a comfort perspective, this one is actually a little surprising because comfort obviously has to do with the relationship of the player's feet with the sole plate and the upper and how the whole package kind of comes together. With the limited version, the Alpha sole plate is actually slightly wider than the Neo 4 Beta sole plate. So what that does is, for a boot like the regular Neo 4 that tends to be pretty roomy in the forefoot because of the leather, and it'll stretch and it'll feel beautiful, the midfoot with that mesh-based synthetic material, the textile-based, it's going to be pretty narrow for some people. Like, I actually still have trouble breaking it in. It takes me about 3 to 4 hours of proper wear time to break them in. The pair that I have behind me somewhere, yeah, but like directly behind me in the corner, those ones took me probably about 4 or 5 hours to break in. And it's a boot that just, it fits me well after break-in time, but it is a little bit more difficult compared to obviously the non-beta version that's really easy because it's a standard U-throat tongue and fake leather as opposed to like a textile-based, really rigid material here in the midfoot. That being said, the out-of-box comfort and the general shape of the limited version with this slightly wider sole plate, I actually think suits the way that this boot is kind of meant to fit and feel. So I'm actually going to give the comfort to the limited. And I think the relationship of the sole plate and the upper and this more stiff midfoot with a wider last, or not wider last, but slightly wider sole plate actually makes the comfort excellent. Now moving on to performance. I think you could argue that either are going to be absolutely exceptional, but I think with the Carvo insert, with the aggressive sole plate, I think you have to give it to the limited as well. Do I think that I could perform equally as well in both boots and be totally fine? Yeah, not a problem. Like, right, I'm not somebody who's going to split hairs really on a performance perspective. And as I said before, I'll probably pick this one more often because of the playing on AG with this type of sole plate is just quite aggressive, and you have to be careful, right? You have to make sure that you're making the right call from a stud pattern perspective. So for me, I'm going to give the performance to the limited. I do think that it just turns it up a notch. I think with the aggression of the sole plate, and especially if you're using them both on FG surfaces like you should, because they're FG models, this one is going to perform just that extra. It's probably 5 to 10% better in terms of performance, like 5 to 10% more responsive. The Carvo adds a pretty significant snap to the boot, which is really cool. But again, that's just going to be up to personal preference as well. But I'm going to give performance to the limited. Now, in terms of design, they're pretty much the exact same. I got to be honest with you, though. I do think that the regular beta, I think, is going to take the cake for me. The reason for that is because this was designed with the conical stud pattern in mind, like this boot was, whereas this one sort of, yes, it looks really good. I'd be interested to see, right, like a colorway like this that's not a blackout, because blackouts obviously it's very easy to hide attributes, and it's very easy to hide things that might not look as good with some sort of color involved in the boot. It's still a beautiful looking football boot. And I love this kind of wave pattern in the external heel counter. And I do think that with the stitching line pattern that's in the forefoot that come down into this more aggressive traction, I do think it actually looks really, really sick. I just think there's something about this silo, because it's been around for so long now and so many generations. I just think this looks absolutely classic and beautiful. So I'm actually giving design to the normal beta version. Now we move on to the lace area. This is going to be literally one word, tie, because they're the exact same. That is one gripe I have with this, though. I do wish they had, because it's a knit collar, it doesn't make as much of a difference, but I think Mizuno needs to upgrade their laces. That's one thing that that's probably the thing that they struggle with the most at the minute, where other brands sometimes are doing better things, like Adler with the Itogo laces, or Itogo laces, however you pronounce that, but really nice lacing. And other brands, and they have Zero Glide. That's the thing. It's like it's not like they don't have the technology. They just need to add Zero Glide laces into it, or add it as an option, right? Do the little add a little baggie with laces of maybe a different color, because that would be cool. All right, and then the X factor. That's an easy one. The limited. It has to be. This is a beautiful classic football boot. It's one of the best overall football boots on the market. And then they just turned it up to 11 with the alpha sole plate. So in terms of X factor, this is what kind of makes this boot, in my opinion, one of the top football boots on the planet at the minute. This will definitely be in the top 10. Like, there's no way this isn't going to be top 10 of 2025. Because this is an exceptional pair of football boots, as is the Alpha with the Morelia sole plate. Although that one's a little bit, I would argue, maybe a little bit redundant, because the AG Alpha exists, and it's kind of like it's 95% there already. And so putting this sole plate on the Alpha isn't as effective as the other way around, for obvious reasons. So that gives the Beta 1-2 points, and that gives the Limited 1-3 points. And there are also 3 ties. So the winner of this comparison is the Limited by basically 1 point. As I said before, I'm probably going to pick this one more often because it's got the conical stud pattern, which I really enjoy playing in. That being said, I am a player who feels comfortable with this type of sole plate on an AG pitch. Is it my favorite? No, but it does feel great, and it does feel, totally performance-wise really well. So Limited is the winner, but as you can probably tell, I am a huge fan of the Morelia Neo IV Beta, and I think both boots are deserving of praise. So that is your weekly boot comparison. All right, hashtag Wear Your Boot Wednesday winner. Wear Your Boots Wednesday winner. Every Wednesday, wherever you are, tag me on your Instagram story of you in the boots. It can be just a picture of you, your feet in the boots, or it can be a full body shot with the hashtag Wear Your Boots Wednesday. We have 3 winners this week because I could not decide. There's kind of a maybe there's like a winner and then there's 2 honorable mentions. I think I'm going to do it that way. So the 2 honorable mentions this week were Hodes, Hoedz, at Hodes, has a beautiful pair. I actually had this colorway and I loved it, of the orange and purple Tiempo Legend 5s in soft ground. A very cool pair of football boots. It is one of my favorite boots of all time. The Tiempo 5 is just, it is everything the Tiempo should be. And in my opinion, it's up there with Tiempo Legend 4 Elite, debatable, or Tiempo Legend 4, just the standard one, as probably the best. I think Tiempo Legend 5, you could argue, is the best Tiempo of all time. It is so good. It is so soft. It's so clean. And it just looks, the silo just looks amazing with that quilted forefoot. It's just, it's so good. So Hodes, thank you so much, or Hoedz, however you pronounce that. And then we also have Luis Pedro Costa 24 with a beautiful pair of silver and black Magista Ober 1s. That is also really ballsy because he's wearing them on an AG surface, which the stud pattern totally takes care of, right? The stud pattern is all conical and it's a really nice sole plate, but Magista Ober 1 is one of the most out of boots that you can buy that are a decade-ish old. The Magista Ober 1 is the least durable out of those. It is so easy to break. I had a pair of the wolf gray and blue ones early on in the channel. I'll see if I can get the thumbnail and put it up for you guys. But it was the first pair of boots that I wore after I got injured. I bought them because I was celebrating coming back from my foot surgery, and I was going to be training back with a semi-pro team in Seattle called Cultures United. I'll put some photos up on screen as well. I ended up wearing Phantom Venoms that season, like some retro Phantom Venoms, which were really cool. Those wolf gray, I literally, it was the first time that I had been in football boots after my surgery and was like running around and kicking a ball. It took me 15 minutes and the sole plate completely separated from the upper. I'm annoyed because I didn't take any photos or have any sort of like media with it. But that was a pair of boots that is so not durable if it's a brand new pair that has not been worn and then you wear it 10 years later. This is the thing. Okay, one sec. This is an interesting point, actually. And this is something we should talk about at some point in a later podcast. Buying boots that are a 9 out of 10 or a 9.5 out of 10 condition that are used will often last longer than a brand new pair in box. If you're like me for some things and all you want to do is try a boot on, and so Vapor 11, they're up there. Vapor 11 TechCraft, I put a post up on my Instagram story. You'll see it on screen. Of the Vapor 11 TechCraft that I got from my buddy Halt's Boots, and those are gently used. It's a boot that I don't really fit in, but the point stands. A gently used pair will last way longer because the glue and the materials have sort of set a little bit, as opposed to the boot comes out of the factory, it hasn't really been like kind of worn a little bit and the materials haven't really set, and then you leave it for a decade and then you try and wear it and it's going to, boom, see you later. It's going to break. So very ballsy, Luis Pedro Costa, but also it looks like you've actually had them for a while. So continuing to wear them is dope. And then the winner, in my opinion, of Wear Your Boots Wednesday, I know this is a long segment this week, but I just could not get over how cool these boots were. Cloudy_Rice had a beautiful pair. Some people will appreciate this pair of football boots. Some people won't know what they are. That's okay. These are the Mizuno Wave Ignitus 2 with the carbon sole plate. I'll put some more photos up on screen of the boots so you can see, obviously, the Cloudy Rice's story. but also pictures of the actual boots themselves. They are so, so cool. I remember these being just like one of the players that I played with way back in Crossfire days had a pair of these, and I thought they were the coolest thing ever. But I was like, how do you get these? And he was, his dad was Japanese, so he bought them in Japan. Anyway, Wear Your Boots Wednesday winner. Some awesome stuff. Thank you everybody who submitted. We had like 20 submissions or 25 submissions this week, which was pretty sick. All right, moving on to performance breakdowns for the Boot Talk. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the video that came out today as of the filming of this video, and it was the play test of the Predator Elite 25 laceless. Now, as you guys know from watching my content, I am not a fan of laceless football boots. I really don't think they're worth it. I do not think, there's a whole thing about when you wear shoes. Shoes are meant to have laces, both running shoes and racing shoes and regular everyday shoes and all that stuff. I totally understand physically not being capable of tying your shoes, right? Maybe you have a disability, maybe whatever it is. Maybe you have, I don't know. So that for that reason, laceless boots can actually be really helpful in a lot of ways. But I do think that if we're talking about performance products, you have to get laces. It's not even close. However, I was very surprised wearing these ones. Part of that is because the Predator 25 fits my foot almost perfectly. It takes about an hour of like proper wear time with very minor discomfort to feel perfect now every time I wear this boot. It is pretty remarkable how comfortable these are. And although I don't think it holds a candle to the laced model or the fold over tongue model in terms of aesthetic and just general performance, this might be the best laceless boot on the market. The caveat there is that the Tequila, which is obviously this is a special edition version, and this is also not the V4 Plus. This is the V4, which is the Tim Weah colorway. This one I don't think exists anymore. I'm pretty sure they stopped making the top end version. Tequila 5's due to come out very, very soon. But if this was still on the market, I would probably say that it's a toss up between these two. And it's kind of like, well, do you want a high top or do you want a low top? The reason this one was so good is number one, this Hypoknit upper is sensational in my opinion. Number two is the collar that they went for is actually quite narrow compared to a lot of other DF models or I say DF, that's like a Nike thing, but any high cut collar would often be a lot wider in circumference and in diameter than this collar. And so the really narrow and shrunk collar made it so that it kind of made the material suction around your ankle and your foot, making for actually half decent lockdown with this boot, which is pretty cool. This one obviously does not have any sort of collar around your ankle. In fact, it's pretty low profile, and it actually goes a lot lower than a lot of other boots on the market that aren't even laceless. Somehow though, and again, this is going to be probably a fit thing as opposed to this is the boot you should buy thing. For people who fit in the Predator flawlessly, I think the laceless boot actually is an option. I know that's wild for me to say, and I never thought I would say that on a pair of like standard boots that aren't a pro special edition player or pro version that has like a internal cage or something like that that's custom fit to that player. But for the off the shelf boots, these are pretty wild because it's totally seamless. There's no laces, so you don't have any lace bite. It feels like an absolute glove it feels like a wetsuit around your foot. Like that's kind of what Hybrid Touch reminds me of. Like it's just this really nice, perfectly contoured wrapping sensation around your foot. And I was really, really impressed by these. So there's decent lockdown with the right size. Grip socks did help a lot, so you can get 20% off if you're interested in the ones that I use, the WeFoot grip socks, which I think are the best on the market. That link will be down in the description box below. So it's just code NOAH20 and you can get 20% off. And then the Hybrid Touch 2.0 really shines with the laceless model. I think this upper is absolutely sensational. It's one of the best uppers on the market, and it continues to be even, a year and a bit now after the release of the first Hybrid Touch 2.0 Predator back in 2024. So very, very cool. So that's performance breakdown for the week. Now let's move on to some industry boot tech talk. I have done some research and talked to a bunch of people, obviously through my consulting business, about how boots are made, the factories they use, how boots are put together, how they're produced, all that stuff. And it's a really interesting conversation that popped up recently, that when a boot is manufactured in the same, so there are several factories across the world, predominantly in Asia, that produce, and in Italy, I would say, in Southeast Asia and in Italy, that produce boots for multiple different companies. Now, obviously, the sourcing of materials sometimes will come from a different place, like K-leather comes from Australia. However, you might have a certain material or a certain last or a certain something that is designed, developed, and made at a particular factory. What's interesting about this is that what that does then is companies then are sort of, let's say factory A produces 2 different pairs of football boots for 2 different companies, Nike and Adidas. And they create an amazing synthetic leather material, or they create an amazing knit material, right? One of those brands will have to either pay extra or get a patent or buy the rights to that particular knit material, right? So if Nike buys the rights to that knit material, that sort of factory proprietary knit then can only be used in Nike boots, despite them also building Adidas boots in the same factory. So there's this really interesting relationship that happens, that some of the best manufacturers in the world will have sort of, not trade wars, but like arguments and wars between who's going to pay the most money to the factory for certain types of materials. And maybe it's sole plate materials, maybe it's carbon, maybe it's whatever. So I think that's super, super interesting. I'm now connected with the largest K-leather supplier in the world, or one of them. It's like one of the top 3 that produce most of the K-leather for most of the top brands, football boot brands in the world. They produce, and what's insane is that every brand will have different types of orders for stuff. And I would love to actually produce a video on this channel that's about that factory, because it's up in Brisbane. So yeah, some interesting industry talk for boot tech. But what that kind of makes me think is, okay, let's assume, and I know this probably isn't the case, but let's just assume that ASICS and Adidas and Mizuno are let's say Mizuno non-made in Japan boots, New Balance, Puma, they're all built in a factory in Vietnam. Let's say that brand has access to, that factory has access to a couple different versions of a synthetic material or a knit. It makes me think, are they being built in a factory that's sort of iced out all of the really good leather variants, given how shit FlyTouch is? Kind of interesting. Anyway, and then speaking of development, the new boots in the shop are boots that I actually can't show you on camera, which are really annoying. But I have 2 different boots from 2 different pairs of boots, one from one company, one from another company. One of the boots that I am working on is going to be launching early next year in 2026. And the other boot that I am getting in, that I just got in recently, is let's say Q3, Q4. So like second half of 2026 release. So pretty cool. So new boots in the shop. What's wild is that the boots that I have on the floor right now are all the boots that you guys have already seen. So The ones that I'll be finishing up the reviews of are obviously the innovation packs for this week. And then we have the Harry Kane Skechers, the Hypervenom Phantom 3s, and 2 of the Enkai boots, which you guys saw last week as well. So those reviews will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. The Mizuno's probably sooner, and then the Enkai boots, and then the Skechers and Hypervenom 3 will release at some point. I want to do something special for that video because it's my favorite pair of boots of all time, which is pretty cool. All right, section 3, market report. Resale market trends. All right, we are going to talk about my own boot store for the resale market trends. So as you guys know, I buy some boots myself for the channel. I also receive boots for free for some of my reviews as well. And sometimes brands just send me boots without any sort of, they're like, here, just take them. And if you want to review them, great. Well, that's actually what I say because they can't. Anyway, they don't pay for reviews. However, I will be putting on my website a boot store in the next week. And we are going to be putting everything, we meaning myself and one of my business partners, are going to be putting together a whole store basically online that will be prices including shipping. For context, it's about $40 to ship anything outside of Australia, but I'm going to be very reasonable in terms of pricing. They are going to be some new, some used. The photos will be really good, so I'll make sure to put details about like certain aspects of the boot. If I've used it a bunch, okay, here's the areas where it's breaking apart, blah, blah, blah. And so that will be coming up very, very soon. The reason I want to do that is because I've had a lot of people go on my Instagram and dally around to be like, I'm interested in these boots. And I'm like, okay, are you going to buy them or not? And then they never respond back. And it's just annoying. So I'm going to put everything that's for sale up on my website, including potentially like products that I've been sent that I don't really want anymore. And I'll just sell them for like zero. I mean, I'll sell them for like cost of shipping or something like that because I just have sometimes I have pileups of boots that I just don't need or want anymore. And they're not going to end up in a boot wall. So therefore, I don't see the reason to keep them. So that's cool. All right, notable boots surfacing. There are technically 5 boots, but it was 1 photo with 4 and 1 photo with 1. First, we have at RF Boots. RF Boots is a lad that I've worked with before. Super, super awesome. Definitely go check out the page. And they are a beautiful pair of Nike Mercurial Superfly 7 Elite in the CR7, is it Shui colorway, which is blue with the white patterning across the upper and then sort of a red or orangey red swoosh outline. Pretty rare and very, very cool. This was a CR7 signature colorway. So super, super awesome from RF Boots. And then at Rare Boots AU on Instagram had 4 pairs in different sizes, believe it or not, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of the Vapor 11. I know we've mentioned Vapor 11 a couple times in this podcast already, but Vapor 11, there is, let's see, the 7 is the red soft ground. The 8 is the purple and orange soft ground. 9 is definitely my favorite out of the group, the black with the pink soft ground, and then a firm ground pair in size 10 with the other CR7 colorway actually. So very, very cool. Stock availability and drops. So what I'm really excited about is that this week we had a much lower drop. There weren't very many drops, and the ones that did happen were not actual football boots, at least the ones that are readily available to everybody. They were a lot lower in the last week or so compared to a lot of what we saw in quarter one. Quarter one was just absolutely insufferable in terms of the amount of launches we had. And it like in between, I think somebody said, was it either on the Bootcast or one of the other boot podcasts that I follow, said that it was like there were like 7 Predator colorways in between 2 different launches of Mizuno colors, which is just ridiculous. Like Mizuno is 1/7 the cadence of Adidas, or at least in quarter one, which is, I mean, that is just ridiculous. That's just so stupid in my opinion. So that's an interesting one. And I think what's happening is we're going to see a lull period probably between now and maybe, let's see, it's May 2nd. God, time has flown already. We are in the 5th. Oh my Jesus. The 5th month of the year. Holy. So we are May 2nd. I would say by the end of May, we'll start to see a ramp up again. But I think for the last week, end of April, early to mid-May, we'll have a little bit of a lull because we're getting ready for the Women's Euros. We're getting ready for all the cup finals that are happening, both domestic, Champions League, Europa Cup, all that stuff. So my guess is that towards the end of Q2 and beginning of Q3, so the summertime for the Northern Hemisphere, wintertime for the Southern Hemisphere, we will see a lot more boots come out in that time, as well as a lot of stuff that it's, special edition Hypervenom remakes and all that crazy stuff, which is pretty cool. All right, section 4, questions. Your questions. You too can ask questions at noahcavanaugh.com/podcast. Every week I pick the best questions of the list that is given to me, and they are really good this week. All right, Hilda Brando asks, who's winning the Champions League? So this is kind of funny for me. I don't know if you could probably know 2 out of the 3 teams that I sort of support on a regular basis. My 3 favorite top end teams, and I know people are like, you can only have one. Okay, if I only have one, Barcelona's my team. But most people, especially here in Australia, they only really watch Premier League because it's sort of the English influence and stuff. So I often will tell people I'm an Arsenal fan, right? Barcelona is my earliest love. Arsenal, and then I don't know if you guys know this, but Inter Milan is actually my favorite Italian team, and it's a team that I've watched for a very, very long time. Our Crossfire kits back in the day when I was like 14, I would have been 16, 17, 18 years old. We were sponsored and had a partnership with Inter, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So it was like way back in 2008, 9, 10 kind of era. Actually a little bit later than that, like 9, 10, 11, 12 kind of era. And just, I thought Inter Milan was like the coolest thing. So I started following them way back then. And so 3 out of the 4 teams, and then PSG, I'm like, screw you. Not screw you, they're a great team, but like, screw you. So 3 out of the 4 teams, in my opinion, 3 out of the 4 teams are the teams that I actually support. Who do I want to win? I would love to see Barcelona win. That's just because it's my favorite team of all time. And I just think that team is so, so incredible to watch. However, Inter has been playing incredibly well. Obviously, that game was insane. And then I would love to see Arsenal come back against PSG for obvious reasons. But I would love to see a final of Barca-Arsenal. And okay, so here's my prediction. Okay, so there's obviously Arsenal-PSG, and there's Barca and Inter. If Barca goes through, I want Barca to win, no matter who they play. Okay? If, let's say, Inter goes through, if PSG goes in, I want Inter to win. If Arsenal goes in, I don't really know. I'd probably say Arsenal because I don't think they've won a Champions League. Have they won a Champions League? Ooh, this is bad. Anyway, I'd probably say Arsenal just because I've been following them for longer. So that's kind of my prediction. So I would say that like in a stack up, it'd be Barca, Arsenal, Inter. And then if PSG wins, I'm just like, oh, that was just such a waste, which is annoying. All right. Andrew says, when do you know a boot is too tight and won't stretch anymore? / how long into the break-in process should you give up on a boot that's too tight? All right. So for me as a player, I know almost every single size, every single boot that's going to fit me and what size it is, right? So if I'm going to pick up a Tequila, I know that it's going to take X amount of break-in time for the most part, but it is going to fit me as long as I get the size right, which is a 9.5 US instead of a 9. Same with these. I need a 9 US, not a 9.5. Normal, true to size, and then they fit me. For boots, let's see. What's the last boot that I barely broke in? Oh, I got to be honest. The Puma Ultra 5 carbons have been very difficult for me to break in because they are so stiff with the sole plate. And I don't just mean the sole plate is stiff. Like the upper can be broken in a little bit, but it is because of how stiff the sole plate is, there is like no movement of that upper at all. And so that's a boot that I gave I can usually tell based on the level of kind of, I don't want to call it pain, but like it is pain, like it hurts. So it's the amount of pressure that I'm feeling on my midfoot, because that's really the only time that I'm going to forego testing a boot over and over and over again, is if it's like, if we're 30 minutes or 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes into a proper training session, and I've had to take the boot off like 2 times, 3 times, and I'm like, man, these are tight. Like you can kind of tell. You should be able to tell, because you can also do this with an upper, and you can kind of put your finger in the boot and like stretch it a little bit and be like, okay, I think these are going to be fine, even if they kind of, hurt a little bit right there. So I honestly, I can, context is I've tried more boots than probably, I would go out on a limb and say that I've actually tested, like properly played in and broken in and tested more boots than everyone on planet Earth except for maybe 3 people. Maybe 3 people. Let's call it 5 people. So that's coming from a context of somebody who I really understand, as soon as I put my foot in a boot, I'm like, I know exactly how this is going to fit. And I can tell almost immediately, like, oh, these are not going to be good for me. So, but that's my answer. For you, I would say give it about an hour. And if you have to take your foot out of the boot a couple times in order to break those boots in over the course of an hour, those are probably too small. Those are probably too small. All right. Jameer asks, if you had to wear one boot brand and one boot brand for the rest of your career, what would you choose? Ooh, this is a good one. So let's say including, oh God, that's a really hard question. Basically what I'm trying to like put together in my head is what boot brand has the most different boots I can wear. So like, obviously the GX2 fits me perfectly, but the Tiempo doesn't and the Vapor doesn't. So it's like, okay, but then I'd be stuck in one boot. So if I wanted to wear one boot brand and have maybe a couple different options over the course of my career, okay, so for this question, let's assume that the current boots are the only boots I'll ever be able to wear, and I'll get a new pair of whatever they are for the rest of my life. No updates, no new boots, no nothing. And special editions are part of that equation. So special edition, the DNA is a special edition, the Wave Cup SS is a special edition. I would argue, I would say top of my list right now, I'm going to narrow it down to 3 brands: Adidas, New Balance, and Mizuno. All 3 New Balance boots fit me basically flawlessly. I think they're incredible. They need to differentiate themselves a little bit between the boots, especially the hypo-knit upper ones. Very good, comfortable football boots. Mizuno for obvious reasons. Oh, and Asics though. And then Adidas. Okay, so if I had to wear one brand the rest of my life, it's probably Mizuno. Because they have the Alpha, which is super responsive, fast, and aggressive. God, I love this question. You have Morelia 2, which is like classic pickup type boots. And then you have things like the Morelia Neo 4, Neo 4 Beta, and the DNA that are like all incredible. It'd probably be Mizuno or Asics. They are so comfortable, and they just make amazing football boots. The reason I would put Mizuno over Asics is because although Asics probably fits me better, generally speaking, even though we're splitting hairs here, but Asics doesn't really have like a alpha competitor. They don't have something that's like hardcore and aggressive. So that's what I would, Mizuno probably. And then it'd be probably like my honorable mentions would be New Balance, Adidas, and Asics. New Balance and Asics, and then Adidas is like just below them. It's so hard, man. I freaking love football boots. Okay, Matthew asks, how do you rebuild confidence on the pitch after coming back from injury? My biggest piece of advice would be to focus on your process. So what are you doing every day to do 1%, not even 1%, just the little habits every day that you are digging into. You're not worried about the outcome. You're not worried about when you're going to get playing time. You're not worried about how many goals you're going to score, how many tackles you're going to make, how many starting 11 minutes you're going to get. You're simply focused on the process. You're coming back from injury? Cool. You got to be in the gym 4 or 5 days a week doing rehab stuff, getting stronger, getting that area, whatever the injury is, getting the area better. Focusing on technique, studying the game, like just focus on the process. The focus on the process will start to train your brain to be focused on your ability, not on the outcome. So my abilities, and I talked about this a little bit in the newsletter that I spoke about earlier, I was fitter than everybody else. So I had an engine, big engine. I could cross and pass really well. And I was a really good leader. I'm being pretty simplified here, but those were like 3 main things that I can pick out of my head and go, no matter where I am, whether I'm playing NPL here in Australia, whether I'm going to play Div 3 in State League, whether I'm playing pickup with friends. Those are the things that I can always lean on because I always believe in those 3 things. Always, always, always. And debatably, I'm fitter now than I was back even at the peak of my footballing career, which is kind of crazy. Hashtag Ironman training. So what I would say is rebuilding confidence doesn't exist, but focusing on your process and just believing in your process and your vision and your mindset and having and building into, hey, these are the core things that I'm really good at. And I'm going to train everything. I'm going to do all my stuff, my position specific stuff and all that. But I'm just going to believe in my abilities, not the outcome. Because confidence implies, oh, he's confident because he's been scoring goals. It's dependent upon an outcome. Focus on your ability is not dependent upon an outcome. It's dependent on who you are as a player. So focus on process. Ryan asks, how do you discover brands like TLSS, SUDU, etc.? Well, I'm a boot god, so get at me. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm not actually kidding. But Ryan, I've got my fingers all over the boot market in terms of what exists, what doesn't exist. And I've got friends who know more than me and friends who are in different locations. And it's pretty easy to find new boot brands when, okay, respectfully, once you hit the level that I have with the audience size and the reach that I have with social media, there are brands who I never knew existed who actually reach out to me now. So I would say first off is I've got really, really cool friends who are really knowledgeable about really niche and small football boot brands that they'll be like, yo, dude, did you see this thing from this brand? And I'd be like, wow, I never even heard of that thing before. Now it's at a point where I've still got those homies. And then I also have people who are reaching out to me that are like, you've never heard of us, but we're this small brand from Indonesia. And I'm like, cool, sounds great. I'd love to review your stuff. So that's an answer there. Gabe, is TokyoFootball your go-to for Asian domestic boots like Mizuno, Asics, TLSS, etc.? Yes. The only other person that I would probably hit up is Lockhart, Andrew, but I don't know if his business is like official. It's sort of like off the books stuff, maybe. I don't know, but DM him. But TokyoFootball is the best in the biz, at least as far as I'm concerned. Other than there's a few, like he's the easiest, but a couple dealers on eBay that are Japan exclusive boots can also be super great, and they're really lovely. So that's it, Gabe. Okay, Tala, is it worth buying the Mizuno Morelia Neo IV Innovation Pack or waiting for the Nike Phantom 360? Dude, I don't know. Those are such different boots. Like, respectfully, do whatever you want. I'm like, do you want a leather speed boot or do you want like a totally random remake that you're never going to be able to buy again? I don't know. David, which footballer best fits the Mizuno brand? Would you want to, or who would you want to see sign with them? Ooh, interesting. For the time being, easy. The winger for Brighton. Why am I forgetting his name? I think that would be so sick. I think him in a pair of like alphas. He wears Puma. Oh, what does he wear? I think he wears Pumas right now. Roster. Okay. Matoma. That's right. So Matoma wears. So number one, he's Japanese, which is like that fits, obviously. That's why I said him. But I'm pretty sure he's a Puma player right now. Yeah, he's a Puma Ultra player. Putting him in a pair of alphas would be so dope. I think that would be freaking amazing. The other player that I think would be kind of cool is I'd love to see like a really creative midfielder wear like a pair of Morelias or something, or a pair of DNAs, or I don't know. I think that'd be so sick. But yeah, Matoma's like the easy one. That's a super easy one. Tony, do you watch or listen to other people's football boot content? Yeah, I do. Of course. That's like part of being into the industry. I totally understand not wanting, like as a reviewer, I don't watch other people's reviews of boots before they come out and I've had them in hand and I've like worn them before. So for instance, if I'm going to watch if Unisport drops a review on the Innovation Pack, but I haven't seen them in person yet and I haven't watched them, or excuse me, I haven't put them on my feet and I haven't like actually held them, I won't watch that review until afterwards. Same goes for anybody else on the market. The only caveat to that is a boot that it is like and I'm going to shout him out again because he's got great stuff, but Andrew from Lockhart Boot Blog, Andrew will review stuff that doesn't exist in the Western world, like doesn't exist in the Western market. So he recently put up a new review of, I think they're the successor to the T7, the Athleta Oray T7. I can't remember what they're called, but it's this like beautiful midnight blue colorway. They're like purple, midnighty blue, and they look really cool. It's a synthetic material upper. And that is a boot review that I'll go and read. And I'll read his stuff because I'm like, I don't know if I'll get those in yet, right? I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to go to the trouble of reviewing those yet. I do now, but I sometimes will read his reviews as opposed to like Boot Wizard and Josh SR4U and Unisport and stuff like. Those guys, I won't touch those reviews until I've already had a chance to either script my review / like kind of get my bullet point notes and like really have an idea of what it is, or just do the review myself. So that's an answer there. But yeah, no, I watch everybody, like as much as I can possibly consume, because I think it's interesting and it's fun. And it's like, in order to be knowledgeable about your industry, you can't just be listening to your own thoughts. That's really fucking stupid if I'm honest. And Tony, that's not a dig on you. I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, right? You want to listen to countering opinions. You want to listen to people who think differently than you, and you want to have conversations with them. I think that's insanely important, not just in football boots, but in life. Last question, Ollie. In your TLSS striker video, you picked it over the Tactician for game day. What are your must-haves for a game day boot, training boot, and pickup mess-around boot? Okay, pickup mess-around boot. Don't care at all. It can be anything and it'll be fun. I enjoy it. Training boot, pretty much the same. Although if it's going to be like a key session, like if it's going to be the session before a game and we're doing, set pieces, running specific formation type passing patterns, whatever, I'll always wear the boot that I'm going to wear in the game for that session. So that's a training boot. Otherwise, if it's not that like pre-match session, I don't care what I wear. And then for game day, for me, it's about having a boot on my feet that fits perfectly, number one, that has performance attributes that are average or above average, and usually on the thinner side. So for a very long time, I have worn more or less some of the thinner boots on the market. Not Vapors and not F50s. F50s more than Vapors, but mostly I've worn 2 generations of Vapors and I've worn 1 generation of F50. Outside of that, and no Puma speed boots other than the Ultra 1.2, I think, which was also really cool. So out of those, though, everything else has been slightly, still really thin, but slightly thicker than those like hyper thin boots. But I'm not wearing, I'm often not wearing leather unless it's a very, very specific boot. I've worn, not this exact pair, but I've worn the I've worn the Morelia Neo 4s, the betas and the non-betas in a game before. I've worn DS Lite X Fly 5 in a game before. So those leather boots that are really thin and really kind of speed boot focused, but leather, the X 99 gram leather boots, but usually I prefer a pretty thin upper. But it has to fit. So I don't really care what brand it is. It just has to fit really well. All right, guys, that is it for the boot report. Thanks for hanging in. If you did, I want you to leave if you did and you watched the entire thing or you listened to the entire thing. Oh, I'm such a gorilla emoji ho. I love that. That's my favorite emoji, I think. Leave the little firecracker emoji. It's like the red cylinder with the little like thing at the end. Leave the firecracker emoji if you stayed to the end. And yeah, leave your questions down below. If I haven't answered anything, let me know. And as always, be awesome. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next episode.